great. Who else needs one? Okay, there, and then no problem. Yeah.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hello. Do me a favor. Find your seats. Most importantly, silence your cell phone. Ooh, yeah. Put it on silent. Those of you that are joining us from the internet, hello. Those of you that are here in person, hey, what up? Is this anybody's first time here with us? Yeah. Oh, welcome! Hey, come back. A, we're nice. B, we give you free art if you come to 6 events and then 12 events. We have these little punch cards. You can get them at any of our events in person and get little punch cards. They say certified history lover. They're very cool to pull out of your wallet by accident at the coffee shop. And, you know, it's honestly a shameless marketing ploy. We want you to come back and learn more stuff with us. Yay! For those of you that are new, welcome. For those of you that are old, hey, you again. Hello, my name is Patty. I'm the founder and executive director of Chicago for Chicagoans. We have been around for 8 years. As of June of this year, it's been crazy. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We exist to provide really awesome history programming to Chicagoans on a pay-what-you-can basis. If you guys have ever taken a tour with the some tours in the city are very expensive, and we want to be the low-cost option designed for people that live here. We want anyone to be able to come learn about Chicago history regardless of the cost. So that's our mission. If you guys have a really good time tonight, you learn something new, you eat some candy, keep in mind, you know, we compensate our speakers for their candy budget. So it's really coming full circle.
Not yet, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah, just submit an expense report. Regardless, the majority of our programming, the majority of the funding for our programming, over 95%, comes from individual donations. Grants are a pain in the ass, so like those individual donations help sustain us. Thank you guys in advance. If you're able to throw us some scratch, any amount will do. We recommend 10 to 20 bucks a person. You can pay for yourself. You can pay for another person who maybe is less fortunate. So that's the mission of what we are, what we do. We do this lecture series in the winter. In the summertime, we're already starting planning. We do walking tours in over 35 different neighborhoods all across Chicago. We have a huge variety of speakers, not just at our lecture series, but on our walking tours as well. So if you see a speaker that you think is awesome during our lecture series, hey, come back, see them in the summer. They love to see you at all times of year. You know, come learn more about the city, come explore, come walk around in nice weather and bad weather. We'll be out there giving tours. And if you know a lot about the city and you want to share it with fellow Chicagoans, hey, we're here for that too. We do these free training sessions called Tour Guide 101, totally free. And you can come learn how to be a tour guide, and then we will shamelessly harass you for years to try to get you to give walking tours for us. And we're like, we pay you, we'll train you, what do you need? There's some people in the room that have been bullied into it. Stephanie in the back took me like 8 years. Giovina took like 5, but it worked. I got there. Olivia 3. Anyway, so you know, you too can be bullied into giving walking tours, but we'll teach you how to do it. Our dates for this year have been announced. So May 5th and June 9th, we'll be doing this free training. So come check it out. Come learn with us. It's a fun time. We tell you everything we've learned over the course of 8 years in like 4 hours. It's impressive. Yeah, so that's what we have coming up this summer. We're really looking forward to doing a bunch of walking tours for you guys. The other great opportunity we have coming up, if you don't have Memorial Day weekend plans, don't make them. We have a beer tent right out front of where we are tonight, room 13 in Lakeview, at the Belmont Sheffield Beer Festival. You can volunteer to pour beers for drunk people at our beer tent. We get to keep all of the tips. It's a huge fundraiser for us. It's super fun. You can drink beer as well. You know, you can't get too sloshed to pour beer, but please, it's a really, really good time. We do it every year. We have a blast. Sign up for a shift. We'll have that volunteer form posted online pretty soon. But don't make Memorial Day plans, especially not on Sunday. We need all help we can get, but it's a really good time. You can meet my mom. She volunteers with me.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, my mom raised me running a Frito pie tent, so it was destiny. Anyway, I'm from Texas. Okay. So without further ado, I've asked you for money. I've told you about our upcoming programming. This lecture series, our theme has been all the ways that Chicago inventors and people and circumstances have changed the world far beyond our borders. We've talked a lot about a lot of great things in this series. March, obviously, is Women's History Month. Woo woo! We're a women-run organization, and it's pretty exciting to have a bunch of badass lady speakers here in the month of March to tell you about many different aspects of Chicago history. So make sure you come back and you sign up for our lectures 1 week and 2 weeks from now. But very, very excitingly, we have not just a woman who's packing hella candy with her tonight. We have our board president for Chicagoans. Yes. If you guys have never been on the board of directors for a nonprofit, I'm on one. I have a board. Suffice it to say, it is very important and sometimes difficult unpaid work. So being a board member is not easy, and we're really grateful for our board members. We're grateful to all of the board members. If you want to join a board, it's not hard. Go find one. You should do it. It's so fun. I really am not selling it well. Anyway, regardless, Erica does a very thankless job for our organization. She gives our McKinley Park walking tours. She gives our Kinsey Industrial walking tours. If you want to know about a building that used to be a train station or a factory in Chicago, Erica is your gal. Erica has been giving tours with us since the very, very beginning. She was one of our first 5 tour guides. She cold emailed me and was like, I need to give a tour of McKinley Park. And I was like, okay, crazy, let's do it.
I didn't know I was one of the first 5.
She was really early. Maybe not the first 5, but like first 10 easily. Definitely the first person to just reach out to me and say, I want to do this. But we love her. She's fantastic. She does so much for us. She's also a historic preservationist with McGuire Gillespie Associates, women-owned architecture firm based up in Evanston. They do amazing things. One of the projects Erica has done is writing the landmark designation report for the Mars Candy Factory. So I can't
I've ever gotten
stress to you guys enough that this is the most qualified person in the city of Chicago to tell you about the history of candy, literally. So without further ado, give her a big round of applause.
Thank you, Patty. Oh my God. Thank you. All right. First, does everyone have a candy bag? Yes? Okay. Get organized. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? I don't like mics, so it's complicated. We have a complicated relationship. If you've ever seen me before, you know I have notes. I have a lot of facts. They all can't live up in my brain. Tonight, we're also introducing kind of recipes and what's in each candy. Along with that, we were talking about Brock's, of course. They had 500 candies alone, so I can't keep all that in my head. So tonight we're going to focus on a few big companies. We have Brock's and Wrigley, of course, as well as Mars. And then we'll have a few interludes with a few smaller companies or kind of tangentially related to the candy industry companies. We're also going to talk about just 5 out of the 1,000 candy purveyors that were once in the city of Chicago. If you're unaware, at the turn of the 20th century, Chicago was known as the candy capital of the world. a title that we've unfortunately lost with so many closures at the end of the 20th century. But hopefully we can kind of relive that moment tonight. So as I mentioned, Chicago one time had over 1,000 candy makers in the city limits, as well as associations and publications related to the candy industry. Chicago can actually trace its candy roots back to 1837, the same year we were incorporated as a city. Happy birthday to Chicago, just a few days ago on March 4th. And we received our first candy business, which was owned by John Muir on South Water near Wells Street. And can everyone hear me okay? Because I have no concept. Okay, thank you, Olivia. And then within 2 years, so 1839, the city had 3 candy makers, and by 1870, there were 17. Chicago was really made for the candy trade. We're at the center of the nation's rail network, and we actually still are today. We're also at the heart of America's agricultural heartland. So Chicago was perfect for candy making. We had an extensive rail system, which provided manufacturers with the means to not only distribute their products nationally, but then also procure the freshest ingredients, such as milk from Wisconsin, cornstarch and corn syrup from Illinois and Iowa, and then sugar beets from Michigan. The Midwest temperate weather, although in the summer maybe it doesn't seem so temperate, played a critical kind of significant role in Chicago also being the candy capital, because you really need that cool kind of crisp air. At the time, chocolate, especially chocolate making, was limited to kind of the spring and autumn months, especially for shipping, because you didn't have necessarily refrigeration to prevent your chocolate from melting. Unfortunately, as time went on, of course, we had that great thing in 1871. The Great Chicago Fire destroyed many of our fledgling confectionaries, but it also brought opportunity. Businesses that chose to rebuild could do so with new machinery that was kind of offered through the Industrial Revolution that could mix, mold, shape, coat, and package candies on a scale never before seen. And we'll talk about a few of those today. Also, to support the growing candy industry, the National Confectionery Association, or NCA, was established in Chicago in 1848. The NCA was founded to support the about 70 national candy companies at the time by helping advance candy making standards and promoting each company's products. The organization is actually still around. It's one of the oldest and most respected trade associations, and it hosts the annual Sweets and Snacks Expo that's actually coming up May 14th through the 16th in Indianapolis, if anyone wants to go check it out. Obviously, about 10-ish years after the NCA was founded, we had the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. Here, some of actually today's biggest brands were introduced to the world in Chicago, specifically in our agricultural building at the fair. We had Ruckheim and Eckstein, was one of Chicago's first candy wholesalers. They were on display with their popular confection. Does anyone want to take a guess at what that was in 1893? Nope. Nope. Cracker Jacks. Oh. We also had samples of juicy fruit gum, which were being handed out by William Wrigley Jr., though he was not in the gum trade necessarily, and we'll talk about that in a second, but he used them kind of as a marketing ploy. And then alongside Wrigley, we had chocolates from Walter Baker and Company and Stolwerk. The fair is also said to have inspired a 36-year-old Milton Hershey, who, after viewing the chocolate making equipment, allegedly bought a factory on the spot. I don't know how that's possible, but we'll go with it. Americans' annual candy consumption soared at the turn of the 20th century, from just 2.2 pounds per person in 1880 to 5.6 pounds in 1914. And then just 5 years later, we were at 13 pounds per person annually. It seems like nothing, but as a person who likes candy in small doses, this is literally buying this candy and having extra is the most I will probably eat all year, and I can't imagine. And then obviously as the 20th century progressed, prohibition swept the country during the 1920s. And Chicago was one of many cities where saloons were converted into confection parlors or ice cream shops to survive. And brewers turned to making chocolate and candy. And if you think about, we had a lot of German brewers at the time, and Germans are also really well-known chocolatiers. It kind of makes sense. By the mid-20th century, Chicago's candy output was about double that of New York City, the country's second largest candy making center. So we were double of what New York was doing, which is amazing. At the peak of Chicago's candy industry during the mid-20th century, the city produced about a third of all candy manufactured in the country and employed close to 25,000 Chicagoans. As the 20th century wore on, Chicago's candy industry, like many industries, was not immune from the wave of corporate mergers and closings, as the advantages that Chicago offered early in the century held less importance. Rail transportation and weather no longer dictated what type of candy could be manufactured or where it could be shipped or when. American candy makers also had to contend with sugar subsidies that kept the price of domestic sugar higher than on the world market, coupled with tight import quotas that made it difficult to purchase less expensive foreign sugar. At the Midwest sugar beets all the way. At the end of the 20th century, several of Chicago's long-standing candy makers, including Frango, Fannie Mae, Brock's, and Wrigley, were acquired by other national or global corporations, many based outside of the city, some based within the city or the suburbs. This led to the closure and demolition of local facilities like Brock's massive factory on West Kinsey Street and Fannie Mae's plant on Jackson Boulevard. In 2004, the Chicago Tribune reported that Chicago had only 7,000 people employed in the candy industry, down nearly 50% from a decade earlier. So that's just a little background into kind of Chicago's broader candy industry, but also just generally how, outstanding and important we are as a city. We've had a lot happen in our history. And so now I want to talk about a few of the major candy companies in the city. As I mentioned earlier, you all have a candy bag. I will tell you when I'm sure you've all peeked. I think I know a lot of you have, which is fine. So there is, I will say, if you have an allergy and you know you have an allergy, please don't eat the candy. So Snickers and Baby Ruth have nuts in it. Milky Way, I made sure, does not. and then there are jelly beans. There is a stick of double mint. I would recommend saving that probably for the end, even though we will go in chronological order and Wrigley comes up first. And then let me think. I think that's everything. And there's a Tootsie Roll. Just because Tootsie Rolls I love, even though they weren't invented in Chicago, they get an honorable mention because Tootsie Roll came here. So.
Will you tell us when we can eat?
Oh yeah, I will. Yeah. And I will say, if you have a packet, you feel free to look through now or take photos. I'll try and point out the photos as we go through. So on the first page, just some interesting photos from kind of the late 19th century, early 20th century of there's the Gunther kind of confectionery, and then the John Kranz candies. So just pass them around if you're the keeper, or take photos first if you want to kind of reference them back. But yeah, or also they're in the Google Drive as well, which I think there's a QR code for floating around. And so with that, we'll get into Wrigley. So of course, we're starting with kind of one of the originals and the biggest names in candy in Chicago. And oddly, it was founded by, obviously, William Wrigley Jr. in Chicago, but he was from Philadelphia. He came to Chicago in 1891. He was actually a soap salesman, and then kind of sold other things like baking soda. So gum, how did he get into the gum game? So it was really a complete marketing gimmick to begin. he started handing out free sticks of gum that he sourced from the Zeno Manufacturing Company of Chicago. Zeno had opened in 1890, so just a year before him. And I recommend, if you haven't ever visited their website, the Made in Chicago Museum, they have a great online blog, and they have a great write-up because the Zeno Manufacturing Company was actually a spin-off of the Rubber Paint Company of Cleveland, and so they have a great history on how a paint company got into gum making here in Chicago. Yeah, I know. I just kind of imagine, like, could you use the gum, like, somehow? I don't know. It was very strange. But regardless, within a year, chewing gum became Wrigley's most requested product, and of course, was no longer free. God, I hate my voice now. So it became his best-selling product. Wrigley's annual gum sales passed 1 million by 1897, and Wrigley and Zeno together employed 500 Chicagoans. In 1910, Wrigley and Zeno formally combined their businesses and created the William Wrigley Jr. Company. The company's annual sales rose to nearly 4.5 million in the decade. And as the new company grew, it constructed a sprawling factory in the original East District of the Central Manufacturing District at the corner of Ashland and 35th. Unfortunately, it has been demolished. But if you want to learn more about the Central Manufacturing District, you can come on our McKinley Park tour, because we don't get to visit the original East District because it's predominantly in Bridgeport, but we do visit the Pershing Road track. So we'll see you this summer, hopefully. As the company's operations expanded nationally and overseas, annual sales grew to 27 million by 1919. And if you have the packet, there are page 2, it says Wrigley right on it. So there is a double-sided page that shows the factory on Ashland, and then also an illustration which shows how massive it was. With the profits, as the company continued to grow, this enabled the construction of one of our most beloved buildings in Chicago, the Wrigley Building, in 1921, and also made Wrigley rich enough to be the primary owner of the Chicago Cubs baseball team. I would say, not beloved for me, I'm sorry, I'm a White Sox fan. During World War II, government-ordered rationing forced Wrigley to stop much of its normal production. Business recovered after the war as annual sales grew from about 38 million in 1946, and then in 15 years grew over to $100 million. During this period, the company employed over 1,000 people in the Chicago area. And by the end of the 1970s, Wrigley's sales peaked at over $500 million just in bubble gum. Beginning in the early 2000s, William Wrigley's great-grandson oversaw the company's global empire from its headquarters in Chicago. But like all great companies, Wrigley was acquired, but I think somewhat luckily it was acquired by Mars, who we'll talk about later, and that happened in 2008. So what has Wrigley invented? Well, a lot of gum. A lot of gum, including Juicy Fruit and Spearmint in 1893. Also, I feel like I knew this in the back of my head, but they also invented Orbit, but in 1899, and actually reintroduced it in 1944, and then again in 2001. And then the double mint stick you have was first invented in 1914. There was a large pause in inventions. One could guess because of, well, 2 world wars and a Great Depression. But in the latter quarter of the 20th century, Wrigley came back with Big Red, Bubble Tape, Hubba Bubba, and Extra. Over time, they also acquired some significant brands such as Lifesavers and Skittles. And feel free to take your gum out now if you want it, but Brock's is up next, and so there is candy for Brock's. Oh, wait, so the Brock's is the yeah, that's the gum for Wrigley. Brock's is jelly beans, and they're in the little compostable Tupperware. Yes, I did specifically buy compostable Tupperware. And then along the same lines, if you're following along with the photos, the third page is Brock's Palace of Sweets, which we'll talk about, and then a photo of their Kinsey plant, obviously well before it was demolished. So we'll get into Brock's. They started about a decade after Wrigley. Emil J. Brock came to Chicago in 1881, and it took about 2.5 decades, 1904, when he actually opened E.J. Brock and Sons. And it really started in the early 1900s. He took his life savings, and there's a really bad joke there because lifesavers candy, but we won't go there. And he opened Brock's Palace of Sweets with his sons, Frank and Edwin, on North Avenue near Halsted, unfortunately demolished, where he sold many chocolate bars and an almond nougat confection, which is kind of contrary to what we know Brock's for today. They're really well known for their Star Bright mints, their butterscotch, their milkmaid caramels, candy corn, love it or hate it, and jelly beans, which obviously you have today to share. Frank, Emil's son, at 14 years old, was the company's first salesperson, securing major clientele like the department stores of Siegel, Cooper & Co. and A.M. Rothschild and Company store. So I was a very ambitious 14-year-old. At 14, I was just playing outside, so good for him. Within less than a decade, Brock's was manufacturing 25 tons of candy a week in 1911, a number that, and here's like my first bad joke, a number that appears like small peas or beans or jelly beans, which entered the chat also in the 1910s. And it went from 25 tons a week in 1911 to 1,000 tons a week in 1918. Beyond being inventors of some of the greatest candy ever, I love Brock's. It's so good. Do you all need candy? Yes.
They need candy.
If you need candy, it's okay. If you need candy.
Sit over there and they can have candy.
Yeah. So there's, it's okay. It's okay. We're very nonchalant here. So you can move, my Apple bag, but grab a brown paper bag out of it, please. Yes. And we're on jelly beans right now, which is the little compostable Tupperware thing in there.
Brown bag you can get around.
Yes. So beyond being the inventors of some of the greatest candy ever, I love jelly beans, and I honestly love candy corn. Sorry. Brock's was also the first to do a lot. So in the back room of his Palace of Sweets, he experimented with a dipping machine to create taffy on a stick, a candy kettle powered by perpetually operating gas burner. So before that, you would turn off the gas in between making your candies. So he had it running constantly. And then he also, alongside that, invented new simplified methods for making soft and chewy caramels on heated pans, which really catalyzed the company, as he was able to sell the pan caramels in bulk at half the price of what competitors were selling. So essentially, while his competitors were making pan by pan, he was able to mechanize the process by having all equipment consistently going. And I'll talk a little bit more about the pan process when we get to Ferrera next. Brock's was also the first to establish a food safety laboratory in 1913. Originally, it was also kind of a marketing gimmick, but it turned out to be very resourceful, and they did use it as to test like their food purity of their candy. So they made it something more substantial in time. Brock also developed a mechanical hard candy cutter that would become the industry standard. Because of all this mechanization, there was a sudden increase in output and obviously increase in sales. So the Palace of Sweets actually only lasted 2 years. And in 1906, Brock's moved to a 3-story factory on Des Plaines Street, where they were able to add peanut and hard candies, and the weekly output quadrupled from 3,000 to 12,000 pounds. Again, the factory was short-lived, as they had to move to a new 5-story building, one of the only buildings left in this entire lecture. It's at the northeast corner of Illinois and LaSalle Street, so please check it out. They were there for about 3-4 years. And they substantially increased output from that measly 12,000 pounds earlier, just 3 years earlier, to 50,000 pounds weekly.
Wow.
They're just turning out candy. Kind of want that job. By 1911, 1912, they moved east on Illinois Street, closer to the Ogden Slip and also the Chicago and Northwestern Rail Line. This would expedite the intake of raw materials as well as the export of finished products. So if you ever read in a historic newspaper about Brock's factory number 1, it's the one on Illinois Street. Unfortunately, demolished. But oddly also was repurposed later on, and we'll talk about the Curtis Candy Company. It ended up being the Curtis Candy Company factory, which I thought was interesting because Curtis is also a German-owned company as well. On Illinois Street, his output, again, it was 5 times greater and now included jelly beans, fudge, cream candies, gum candies, marshmallows, and chocolate icing and dip. So they were really able to expand their offerings. So much so that by 1915, Brock's needed a second factory, known as number 2, and opened the new plant at Franklin in Ohio, which is also extant, which is so great. It's right at the southeast corner of Franklin in Ohio. They had a factory building, and then a little bit further down at 215 Ohio Street, they had their offices, both extant. In 1922, though, again, they're really pumping out candy, and they undertook their largest improvement yet with the construction of a whole new literal palace of sweets when they started construction on a new factory on Kinsey Street that would consolidate the company's entire manufacturing, research, and administrative wings. It was literally the world's largest candy factory at the time of construction. And it was designed by the undisputed king of industrial architecture, Alfred Altschuler, which again, if you come on my McKinley Park tour, you'll get to hear about his buildings. The plant had 2,000 employees and was one of the original sunlit factories, which basically means it was, again, if you come on McKinley Park, I guess that's all, you all just got to do that. Essentially, though, the construction method for the building allowed for very large window openings and for the factory then to be naturally lit and ventilated as well. And oddly, you might be thinking, how did Brock's is making a lot of money supposedly? How did they all fund their improvements? I thought it was really interesting. The Brock family was very committed to never taking out a loan or a mortgage or debt of any kind. So for several years, even his own sons paid less than $10 a week, and all surplus money for years, and all surplus money went back into the factory. That way the family never had to be indebted, which I find really interesting because later in the history of Brock's, when it's no longer owned by the family, there obviously was debt taken out, which led to the company actually being sold for $1, even though they were turning out, several $100s worth of sales. So it's kind of unfortunate that happened. But again, love it or hate it, 1920s, we got our candy corn. And then the factory also included a state-of-the-art department dedicated to chocolate production, as Brock looked to get into the chocolate bar craze of the 1920s. They put out Brock's Almond and Milk Chocolate Bar, which was also known as the Perfect Almond Bar, but it never took off. It could not compete with O. Henry and Baby Ruth, and the several chocolate bars we'll talk about from Mars as well. Also, and surprisingly, despite anti-German sentiment during World War II, Brock himself actually did not associate with his German heritage. He left Germany at a very young age. His wife was Irish, his children were American, and he kind of was able to be very profitable and not kind of succumb to that anti-German sentiment, during the mid-20th century. And ultimately supplied much of the candy in emergency rations and for the Army exchanges during World War II. Millions of Brock caramels, their cellophane hard candies, boxed candy drops, jelly drops, chocolate swing bars, and other treats went into the C and K rations for the troops, while plenty more were distributed to the USO and defense plant workers. This proved lucrative as government contracts, surprisingly, paid much higher than civilian sales during war times. Brock, along with many other producers of kind of like food manufacturers, he was asked by the government to produce powdered eggs for rations at the time as well. So they kind of transitioned some of their equipment for that process. In the 1950s, Brock's finally took the hint and they bowed out of the chocolate bar game. But instead, as we kind of saw new colorful magazine ads, as well as television ads with color now, they came back with the Pick-a-Mix, which enabled consumers to experience the traditional way of buying candy from barrels and then weighing it in the supermarket. And then during the 1950s, along with, kind of the more color, we got our Valentine candy hearts, which was kind of one of Brock's big expansions. I know, I'm sorry, it's March, so we got jelly beans instead of candy hearts in February. At the start of the 1960s, the company produced over 200 million pounds of candy in 1961 alone, with now more than 500 different varieties. With more than 400 substantial candy makers in the country, Brock still owns 7% of all sales and candy making in the U.S.
Right now.
No, in 1960s.
Oh, in 1960s.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Unfortunately, Brock doesn't exist as Brock's anymore. Unfortunately, like all great companies, and I think this tells a lot from this quote on their website, but unfortunately, like a lot of other companies between the 60s and the 90s, and this is from their website, Brock's goes through some mergers, some acquisitions, and some relocations to the Chicago suburbs. They really don't want to talk about how they got acquired or sold off. They just leave it at that one sentence on their website history, which I think is very telling. And then finally, after 80 years in 2003, they closed their Kinsey plant, leaving over 1,000 without work. And today, though, in a kind of turn of events similar to Wrigley being acquired by Mars, Brock's line of goodies is under a different historic Chicago confectioner, Ferrara Candy Co., which we'll get to next. And then in recent years, actually, in 2019, Ferrara moved their offices as well as the Brock kind of division offices back into Chicago, into the old post office. Which, if anyone's been in there, my firm did a lovely job restoring the lobby, so please check it out. And I will say, we're strictly candy business tonight, but if you're curious, all these candy families have a lot of just wild things, oddly, in their family histories, or just in general. So if you're curious, you can look up the 1948 explosion at the Brock's factory, which I've never heard of this before, but you learn something new. It was a starch dust fire. So cornstarch was in the air, and there was a spark from a machine, and it took a third of the Chicago Fire Department at the time to put out this fire. And surprisingly, obviously, the building was saved. Probably not. Burnt sugar? Yeah. You can also look up, if you're curious, I'm sure there's some people who are into murder mystery. Obviously, I'm going to say there's the story of heiress Helen Brock in 1977, her disappearance and presumed murder, which happened the same time as the same year as the strike at the Brock's factory. So you can find that all online, but strictly candy tonight. So next, we'll go on to Ferrara, which kind of just works out perfectly. They were founded 2 years after Brock's in 1908. There is no candy related to Ferrara. I will say, I was not going to give you all Jawbreakers or Lemon Heads, and then I was going to get Red Hots, and I was like, nope, these are not good for anybody, so they're not doing this. So I'm sorry, but I also couldn't find Red Hots in any single grocery store. I also had to go to several stores to find Baby Ruths. So So I did try, but then I looked at the ingredients. I was like, maybe not. We're good. And I will say, so not to be confused with Ferrero, though oddly Ferrero does enter the scene later in this lecture. Ferrero was founded in 1908 in Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood. Their actual building, so if you're on page, I believe it's 4 now, we have the Taylor Street building, which is still there. And it has this great original sign, original Ferrero Co. pastries out front. And then we have on the reverse is their 1960s factory, I believe, which is still extant.
Is the bakery gone?
I believe it's still, open.
School Italian
Yes.
bakery and sandwich shop now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ferrero. It's
Yeah.
very good.
Okay.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and we'll get to it, but the candy company actually ended up being a division of this original pastry shop. Oh my God! But so as I kind of mentioned, Ferrero is well known today for a range of candies, including lemon heads, juju fruits, atomic fireballs, red hots, and their Boston baked beans. They're also the largest producer of candy canes. And the largest seller of the what they call conversation hearts, but that's because Ferrero ended up purchasing Brock's, and we'll get to that later. So Ferrero was founded by Salvatore Ferrera. He was an Italian pastry and candy maker who immigrated to the United States just before 1900. He worked with the Santa Fe Railroad actually as an English interpreter. And in 1908, he moved to Chicago specifically to complete his dream owning a confectionery, and he opened the Ferrero Candy Company and produced pastries, wedding cakes, and sugar-coated almonds, also known as Jordan almonds, that he had learned how to make in Italy and actually became the most popular product in his shop. From 1908 to 1921, Ferrero's candy business flourished throughout the Midwest, and he ended up forming a partnership with 2 of his brother-in-laws. And in 1921, they created that separate candy division under Ferrero Candy Company. And then the Taylor Street facility was built, specifically kind of a bigger building. That way you could have the pastry storefront as well as the factory for candies. Together, the 3 made candies that were panned. And so here's a description of what a panned candy meant, at least back in the day. So this is in which a center, such as a nut, fruit, or hard candy, or they said, or a grain of sugar, I guess probably caramel, was tossed in a rotating pan while dry granulated sugar and other ingredients were added. So the center would then accumulate layers of flavor and color. And that's kind of, they were just made in pan, so that's how they got the name, but essentially it's just a rotating pan where you add more and more ingredients so you get your final product. Many of Ferrero's creations were also sold in bulk to retail outlets. They stepped out of the pan candy world in 1932 and when they introduced Red Hots, which was that small cinnamon hard candy. It seems like, just from research, Red Hots maybe also was a common name for this type of candy. And they kind of, leading up to World War II, Ferrero then manufactured very specifically like an assortment of non-branded candies where it was not necessarily their own, but just like a common type of candy that was popular at the time. By World War II, though, or after World War II, they kind of decided to, and an increase in competition, they decided to take a different route and really focus on branded panned candies. And they changed their name to reflect this process, and they now became the Ferrero Pan Candy Company. Imagine that. Over the next few decades, the company's revenue grew to about $100 million annually, which doubled between just 1990 and 1993. The company continued to expand its branded confections with lemon heads and atomic fireballs in the 1990s. And they actually even acquired the right to manufacture fruit snacks and other confectionery products under the Jurassic Park license, which I did not know, and I thought was fun. In a century, the company grew from that modest building on Taylor Street to being in 40 countries with over 8,000 employees and responsible for the creation of Brock's, Jelly Belly, Nerds, Sweet Tarts, Laffy Taffy, and more. So they really just like, they're like a... They're kind of interesting because they started really small, but they acquired some really big names as they grew. Let's see. All right, next we have the Curtis Candy Company. So in your little bag of treats is a Baby Ruth.
Isn't that what you just ate?
Oh, you went ahead. You weren't supposed to go ahead and eat it. Wait, do you have your own? Do you have a bag?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
I have a son. I do. Yes. You ate my baby.
All right.
That's yours.
So while you all get your candy out, also if you're following along, page 5 has the Curtis Candy Company factory on Illinois Street, which is the same address, coincidentally, that Brock's was located at earlier in the 1900s. And then on the back, that factory's been demolished. On the back is their office building, which was actually located at Diversity and Broadway, unfortunately also demolished. As soon as I found this picture, I was like, immediately go to Google Street View. I was like, I don't think that building is there, but I need to know. Yeah, and it has a great little Baby Ruth sign out front, which I love. So getting into a little bit of the history of the Curtis Candy Company, its two most famous products is Baby Ruth, which was actually rebranded in 1921, and we'll talk about the history in a moment, and then Butterfinger in 1936. Yeah, sorry, I'm not a fan of Butterfinger, so if I ended up going home with some, it all had to be candy I was happy to go home with. The Curtis Candy Company was founded in Chicago in 1916 by Otto Scherning. But he actually used his mother's maiden name for the company due to anti-German sentiment during World War I. And as I mentioned earlier, Germans were renowned chocolatiers, but despite this long kind of history or heritage, Otto really focused on just like experimenting and seeing kind of like what stuck to the wall or, was exciting for people. He did not necessarily focus on chocolate specifically. It was really big and just like, let's just play around with ingredients and see what happens. According to company lore, Otto got started with a single 5-gallon kettle inside a small office in the back of a hardware store on Clark Street, unfortunately demolished, 3200 block. He upgraded to an entire floor on the 3200 block of North Halsted, also demolished. But it was still too small for him, even though he only had 4 employees at the time, plus himself. And at the time, they were really just manufacturing their first product, which was candy cake, spelled with K's. And that was later actually rebranded in 1921 as the Baby Ruth. So it started a little bit earlier under a different name. We do not have time to get into the naming of Baby Ruth. There's a long, historians still debate, what it's named after. I'm going to go with what... not that I know of. I'm going to go with what Otto went out on his deathbed saying, was that it's named after President Grover Cleveland's little daughter, Ruth. So, but you can look it up online. It's great.
Well, no, he's going to sue him, that's why.
Yeah.
He took his name without that.
Yeah, so you can, oh, thank you. You can look
Drink up.
you can look online about the history of the naming and what people debate. Okay, I guess I'm just supposed to drink. Hold on, this thing. I know, but I'm just so excited about candy, and I have not.
Liquid candy.
Now it's orange flavored water.
Put the candy bars in your drink.
I thought about if we should have a candy inspired cocktail tonight, but I was like, that's too much, Erica, too much. Anyways, the candy cake was an instant success, and in 1919, the company opened a new factory. This is a wild thought to me. It was on Briar Place, not too far from here. So right like right at Briar and Clark Street, demolished unfortunately. But it's just like really bizarre to think. I was like, I could not imagine a factory there, but it was. So 750 Briar Place, unfortunately demolished. It employed 400 Chicagoans. The success of the candy cake, also known as the Baby Ruth, was really spurred by the return of soldiers from World War I who had just been introduced to the wonders of the candy bar in their rations overseas. Otto, who had been still assisting with the actual candy making process at this time, was now a full-fledged CEO, and this is adorable, he hired his dad as the company's first treasurer, which I just love. Growing but not forgetting family. With the rebranding of Baby Ruth, annual sales surpassed 1 million in 1921, and success was followed by the Butterfinger, which is a chocolate-covered, if you don't know, but I'm sure you do, but just in case, a chocolate-covered peanut butter crunch bar, which kept the company actually running through the Depression, and then was followed in short succession by the Polar Bar, the Vanilla Coconut, Jolly Jacks, Marshall Nut Dip, and the honeycomb chip. What else? Along with dozens of other more generic offerings, so more like those non-branded candies that Ferrero was doing at the same time. And they kind of included butter rolls, Italian cream fudge, zebra suckers. I don't. golden nuggets and marshmallow bananas. I got a lot of questions.
What is the zebra sucker?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't Google that. Not going down that road. The new factory not only gave Otto a lot of space, but it gave him the opportunity to create a hyper-efficient candy-making complex that would have made his German ancestors very, very proud with its efficiency. Here, Otto actually designed monster peanut roasters, cooking kettles, open fire mixers, endless conveyor systems, and chocolate slab and bar breaking equipment. The factory also became one of the biggest users of gas power in the city at the time and kept operations going smoothly during hot summer months with climate control and refrigeration, transforming the chocolate industry, which, as I mentioned earlier, had generally been an autumn to spring game. Made in Chicago Museum has a great in-depth article on kind of the promotional tactics of Otto that he took on. He was really well known for undercutting his competition, selling candies for half of what his competition was selling them for. He would literally plaster the Baby Ruth logo on billboards and barns, had sponsorships at circuses and horse races. And their most famous stunt was when noted racing pilot Doug Davis was hired to perform aerial tricks and drop parachuting Baby Ruth bars from his biplane over downtown Pittsburgh.
What does that mean?
Literally, like, he was in a biplane throwing Baby Ruth out the plane.
So it wasn't like a person parachuting carrying.
I don't know. I'm assuming maybe there would like. I should have looked up a photo for that. Like, I wonder if the candy had.
Parachutes on the actual candy bar.
I don't know, but it would have sold me regardless. Otto also was kind of really smart. He encouraged employees to actually snack off the line, and which was no surprise because as he was the chairman of the NCA, the National Confectioners Association, which I mentioned earlier, and he played a leading role in promoting candy as a healthy habit rather than a vice. It was all marketing, and if you look up Otto, he started in marketing and he kind of fell into candy. He was like, I'm helping these candy makers do marketing, but like I can just do candy myself and I can do the marketing in-house. So that's how he kind of fell into candy making.
To confirm, it was individual parachutes for the candy bar.
I love it.
Individual parachutes for each candy bar. Okay, so like a full-size candy bar that was big.
Yeah, not a fun-size Baby Ruth falling from the sky, but a full size. Yeah. Otto was also really interesting because of the company's success. He also was leading the pack in the 1940s, just about all employees had paid vacations, options for pension plans, and profit sharing, as well as company provided health insurance and life insurance. And while it all sounds great, not going to lie, it was really based on his anti-union stance and his desire and admiration for the company town of like Pullman. Yeah. And he finally got his company town very interestingly when he established Curtis Farms in Cary, Illinois, which became the company's main supplier of milk and had several hundred employees living on site like a small town setting in rural Illinois. So he kind of got his company town in a way. They continued to make headlines in 1943 when Otto employed Japanese laborers in the middle of World War II, which was obviously no one was doing that then. At the beginning of the 1960s, with 60 million in annual sales, U.S. candy industry. Control the Chicago area in 1960 when Curtis was purchased by Standard Brands, which is a large national food company. Is in the original central manufacturer. My out of detail. Standard Brands nerd. Standard Brands then merged Bisco in 1991, who then sold off the Curtis brand to Nestle in 1990. So, obviously, the Streeterville factories long demolished. Curtis Farm was sold in 1968, but the company still manufactures its famous candy bars just outside of Chicago. My mom is asking me how it's going. Thanks, Mom. Just outside of Chicago in Franklin Park. She has no concept of time sometimes. Sorry.
Should we clap?
And so they're still manufacturing, but just outside Chicago and Franklin Park. So if you've ever been, obviously, on Interstate 294, you've probably seen that 1960s factory that I had a photo of. And the rotating sign, which was meant to resemble a giant candy bar, it read Curtis Baby Ruth on one side and Curtis Butterfinger on the other side until it was changed to Nestle following the acquisition in 1990. All right. We got Mars, the best for last. And so in your candy packet, there is Snickers and there is a Milky Way. The Milky Way was predominantly included, at least so if you have a nut allergy, you had at least one chocolate bar for the evening. You're welcome.
If you have an allergy.
A nut allergy, yeah.
Oh, it's not allergy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try to be inclusive. It's kind of bittersweet how Mars got started. That was definitely a pun, if you got it. So Mars was established in 1911 by Franklin Clarence Mars. We'll call him Frank. Frank, at a young age, was actually stricken with a mild case of polio. So while he was stuck at home, he learned how to make candy and hand-dipped chocolates from his mom. As Frank got older, he loved experimenting with candy recipes, and by the age of 19, he had perfected making the molasses chip, which is I had to look this up because I've never had a molasses chip. So it's a crispy honeycomb wafer flavored with real molasses on the inside, drenched in layers of milk or dark chocolate. So I was thinking, I think there's molasses baking chips that you can get. I was thinking it's not like that. So it's a much more, there's a lot more to it, much more substantial kind of chocolate creation. He would make the candies at home and then sell them to local stores. So in 1902, he kind of brought his ambitions to the next level when he acquired a wholesale candy firm in Minneapolis. That same year, he married his first wife, Ethel. And in 1904, the couple had a son, Forrest Mars Sr. That's about as much as I'm going to cover on the Mars family history. You can go online. It's very, very interesting. But when I mentioned Forrest later, I wanted to make sure you all knew who I was talking about. Frank kind of continued, but competition at the turn of the century was very steep, as the Hershey bars was just introduced in 1900, and unfortunately his kind of wholesale business failed. Frank ended up getting divorced, leaving Forrest behind, and moved to Seattle in 1911, where he love of candy making, but unfortunately failed again. He moved back to Minneapolis in 1920, where then he learned a new whipped marshmallow filling known as Minneapolis nougat. And of course, I put "learned" in quotations because it was invented by someone else, and Frank just kind of took the idea and ran with it, not his. Like all great candy makers, he took his life savings again, just like Brock. And again, I won't go down the path of the lifesavers joke. And he established the nougat chocolate confection. Patricia's chocolates. After his daughter with his second wife, who is also named Ethel. So going forward, if you hear an Ethel, it's also the second wife now. So finally, success. He incorporated as the company in 1920, candy bar in 1922. This featured Minneapolis nougat and a shell of milk chocolate. That same year, this is the night. I don't know what happened, but that same year, Frank and his son Forrest allegedly reconnected, and Frank invited him to Minneapolis. They kind of talked about the trials of the family business, though mind you, Forrest had not been involved, so not Forrest's family necessarily. And specifically, they talked about the shelf life and instability of the Marrow bar. Inspired by, yeah, I know, very, very detailed stuff. Inspired by malted milkshakes popularized during the 1920s, Forrest allegedly asked, "Why don't you put chocolate malted milk in a candy bar?" Like, so perfect idea. So father and son collaborated with Marrow Bar's master candy maker, Tom Delato, and invented the Milky Way in 1923, a bar of nougat mixed with malt-flavored chocolate, which kind of helped with the stability and shelf life of the candy bar, layered with caramel and encased in a chocolate shell. And that was it. Milky Way was the turning point for Frank and his love of candy. The company, which had lost $6,000 in 1922, made $800,000 in 1924. And with the success of the Milky Way bar and an increase in manufacturing, Frank was ready to get out of Minnesota and into the candy capital of the world. And the company relocated beginning in August 1928. That's when it was announced in the Chicago Tribune. And the current factory out in kind of the Austin, Galewood, Montclair triangle opened in 1929. But Frank didn't stop there. He wanted to build, as he said, the most beautiful candy factory in America. And I think he accomplished that. But I promised myself I will not go down a building nerd route. So I will say, if you want to know more about the architecture, the preliminary landmark designation report is available online. Just search Mars Candy Factory landmark report. And everything I've written so far, kind of in summary form, is there, especially about the architecture. So that new factory, as I mentioned, opened in 1929 with 300 employees. Actually, I kind of love this. Like 80% of those employees actually relocated with the company from Minnesota. And cheers to the factory. It is closing this year, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But 2024 is its last year. Everything was fantastic for the Mars company. Father and son collaborated again and developed the Snickers bar, which you all have, in 1930, and the Three Musketeer bar in 1932. The Snickers bar featured that nougat center topped with caramel and peanuts, all encased in milk chocolate. Staying true to the use of the Minneapolis nougat then, which initially propelled the company, the Three Musketeers bar originally featured 3 pieces of the whipped mousse or Minneapolis nougat in one package. So there was a chocolate piece, chocolate-filled piece, a strawberry-filled piece, and a vanilla-filled piece, all coated in milk chocolate. The vanilla and strawberry pieces eventually would be phased out for the more popular chocolate due to rising costs and the World War II era restrictions on sugar. While the national economy struggled during the Great Depression, Mars saw sales quadruple. As Mars grew within the candy industry, Forrest, the son, wanted to expand the company markets, but Frank, the father, was not interested. He literally gave his son $50,000, the international rights to the Milky Way, and sent him to the UK. And Forrest, and that was in 1932. Forrest went on several side quests while Mars in Chicago focused solely on confectionery. Forrest kind of looked at instant rice to M&Ms, and that's kind of why you have a lot of random, also pet food, you have a lot of kind of random companies under the Mars name today, because Forrest, when he went out there, he was interested in diversifying, and he literally went and kind of sought all these different companies. In 1934, Frank unfortunately died after, very traumatizing, I'm sure, for workers. He collapsed on the Chicago factory floor due to heart and kidney issues. He left, I know, I can't even imagine. He left the majority of the company to his second wife, as I mentioned, also named Ethel, and their daughter, Patricia. Ethel ran the company until 1945, and then Patricia was like, I don't want this responsibility, and she appointed her uncle, William Krumpenbacher, as CEO. I know. We're just going to call him William, because that's too hard. That's too much for me. Under William, employment surpassed 2,000, and Mars began cross-promotion and new modes of advertising. In 1953, the Chicago factory celebrated 25 years, and at the time was the largest candy factory in the world, now surpassing the Brock's factory. And then, let's see, in 1959, William retired after years of being annoyed by Forrest, who really wanted to run the company and felt like it was his right. So Forrest finally acquired enough shares and became CEO in 1964. And we'll say there should be a picture of Mars. It should be in there. Yes, page 6. So there's a picture of it kind of pre-1960, and then on the side is post-1960, and the reason that I know that is because there was a new office addition on the far south side of the factory. Under Forrest, he instituted some first and really interesting changes at the Chicago factory, and changed it to a kind of egalitarian system where workers were also called associates, and everyone, including the president, ate lunch together and punched a time clock. He restructured salaries and then was able to provide salary increases for all workers at all levels and improvements in benefits and bonuses. No, he was pretty interesting. He took out any superfluous details in the building, he took it out because he felt like, why do the executives get to look at stained glass if the workers don't get to look at stained glass? And as a preservationist, I'm like, oh God, that hurts me, but I get it. The factory's exterior was well maintained, but for Forrest, he wanted the quality visible in every aspect of the factory, so new machines and technology were installed to keep the factory cleaner and more efficient. During this time, many of Mars' local contemporaries were disappearing or merging into larger companies. With fading competition and the dominance of the candy industry, Mars became the kind of undisputed behemoth of confections globally. Forrest retired in 1973 and left the company to his sons. And over the last 5 decades, Mars has continued to grow and diversify under 3rd and 4th generation leadership, as well as finally non-family members, which just kind of entered the higher up scene in 2004. In the Chicagoland area and in Illinois, Mars continues to maintain a presence with an ice cream plant in Burr Ridge, a candy factory in Yorkville, and a pet food plant in Mattoon. The company also maintains its global headquarters for its chocolate and chewing gum subsidiary, the Mars Wrigley Confectionery, inside Chicago's Global Innovation Center located on Goose Island. The factory on North Oak Park Avenue in Chicago is still in use but will permanently close this year, though Mars is working to relocate the employees of the factory who desire to stay with the company, much like they did when they first moved to Chicago. And they've done a really quite interesting and again a first for a company of this size. They've held several in a very long-term process, community engagement process, to find out what should be done with the factory, which is why it's being landmarked, which you would not think from a a large company like that. And then so that's kind of Mars. Are we here till 9, Patty? Okay, we're so some honorable mentions. Some honorable mentions. I of course Fannie Mae was not in the candy budget, but I want to give them a shout out. So page 7 is the Fannie Mae store on LaSalle Street when they first opened, no longer extant, demolished. And then unfortunately also then their Jackson Boulevard plant, which has also been demolished. Fannie Mae kind of really came out of Prohibition when people needed some sort of like sweet tooth or sweet fix, and separate of alcohol, some sort of stress relief. And traditional candy makers continued to open new businesses, including H. Teller Archibald, who in 1920 opened the first Fannie Mae store on North LaSalle Street. That same year, the company introduced their buttercreams, which feature silky smooth fillings coated in chocolate and remain the company's only confection for nearly 3 decades. And I feel like I have not had one of these, and I feel like I need to try one now if it kept the company going for several decades. By 1935, Fannie Mae had nearly 4 dozen shops across Illinois and in neighboring states. During the World War II era, Fannie Mae held on to its success by producing sweet treats in their original recipes. So despite a scarcity of ingredients and while many competitors had to change their recipes, Fannie Mae stuck with it. Post-World War II, the company introduced many treats still made today, including pixies, which are kind of like a turtle, if you're familiar with that, as caramel, pecans, all coated in chocolate. They're mint meltaways, and then Carmarsh, which is a center of caramel and marshmallow coated in chocolate. The company manufactured its treats out of a massive plant on Jackson Boulevard, which, as I mentioned, has unfortunately been demolished. Fannie Mae is not unlike others, though, as they fell victim to buyouts and mergers throughout the early 2000s. Even I was really surprised, even at one time being owned by 1-800-Flowers.com. and full circle to my earlier kind of like Ferrero joke. Fannie Mae is now actually owned by Ferrero Rocher, not Ferrero, and they were purchased in 2017. But the company remains company is able to remain a Chicago staple, turning out 100 different kind of types of confections that are growing each year. So they're still here, but they're not, Fannie Mae as Fannie Mae was. A few other honorable mentions that are kind of tangentially related to the candy industry. Blomers, obviously. If you've never smelt the Blomers factory, are you okay? Like, I'm sorry, you need to go down. you need to visit just like the West Loop area, and it's a whole experience. Well, they're not. Yeah.
Where is it?
Oh.
Milwaukee and Kinsey.
Yeah.
Milwaukee and Kinsey. Okay.
Oh, so Blomers is at like the Milwaukee Kinsey area. Yeah. So they're not necessarily an inventor of a candy per se, but they've been a major player in Chicago's candy scene for almost a century now. As candy companies came to or formed in Chicago, producers of corn syrup, cornstarch, and flavor extracts, as well as processors of corn and milk, sugar refineries, and paper box factories appeared across Chicago's industrial landscape to kind of serve the flourishing, Chicago or the candy industry in Chicago. In turn, these industries drew more candy manufacturers to Chicago because everything was here that you needed to make candy, ship it, pack it. It was all in Chicago. One such supplier was Henry Blommer Sr. and his brothers. Established in Chicago's West Loop, the Blommer Chocolate Company is a wholesaler that began processing cocoa beans in 1939. So if you go past the Blommer's chocolate factory, you're going to smell a lot of chocolate, and it's lovely. The brothers chose Chicago as the headquarters for their new company because, as one family member later explained, and this is a quote, very simply, this is where our customers, the candy makers, are. That's it. That they chose Chicago because that customers and candy makers, they're here. The company is one of the largest chocolate suppliers in North America, accounting for nearly 45% of cocoa beans processed in the U.S. Into the second half of the 20th century, outside companies were attracted to the advantages of Chicago, where urban manufacturing, transportation, advertising, and innovative new marketing approaches came together. And so Blommer's was one of those. They tangentially saw that something was needed to serve the candy industry, and so they came to Chicago, like, we're going to process chocolate for you. And obviously, there is a Tootsie Roll in your bag because I love Tootsie Rolls. Not from Chicago, but in 1966, the Sweet Corporation, which was originally founded in New York in 1899, changed its name to the Tootsie Roll Industries, and 2 years later, in 1968, relocated its headquarters and primary manufacturing facilities to Chicago. So even like this company in the second half of the 20th century felt like still Chicago was the place to be for candy manufacturing, which is very telling as Chicago being the candy capital of the world. So that's just a very brief history. As I mentioned, there's 1,000 candy. Oh, yeah. In Chicago. Yes, questions. I will try my best. Did you have
Candy train? There's a candy train. There was a candy train.
Oh, am I going to just be sad gone?
There was a candy company, and there was a train to deliver their sugar to them.
Oh.
I'm shocked about this.
Much.
Supposed to taste.
Yeah. It's supposed to fruit. I would say lime with the green ones, and probably cherry with the red ones. I don't know what other. I don't except jelly beans occasionally. I don't eat chewy like chewy. Yeah. Oh, juicy. Oh, I was thinking of Juju. Sorry. I was thinking of Jujubes. Sorry. That one. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. Juicy fruit gum. I don't know, and I don't like it, which is why you got double mint today. So, because I don't know what it's supposed to taste like, but it's not delicious to me. Yeah.
So, Brock, didn't they have a factory on Division Street? Because I grew up on the west side. I distinctly remember a factory which has since been Division and Cicero. Yeah. Did they have that? Was that factory number 4 or something? Because I don't even.
I didn't.
The 1 and 2. I did.
Yeah, I hadn't. I have not seen a factory number 4. I don't know if maybe.
They tore it down. But
Yeah, I'll have to look. You said Division and Cicero.
kind of. Yeah, I don't know if quite Cicero, but definitely was on Division.
Okay.
They used it for a super.
They blew it up with Superman. They blew up the factory when they made the
Superman or Batman?
Batman. I'm sorry.
That's
Batman.
that's the Kinsey factory.
Oh, that was a Kinsey factory.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. But
yeah.
those
So
were
there's
Division.
yes. So the Kinsey plant was blown up in the Heath Ledger Joker Batman
Oh, yeah,
movie.
that's
So
right.
like it was used as like the Gotham Hospital, and so there's a scene where he's like walking up and they're like blowing up part of that beautiful building. Kill me.
Yeah, so anyways, I just said,
Yeah.
but I know, there's only so much information.
Yeah.
So is there a candy capital now?
I don't think so, because a lot of our industries have left. So obviously, as I mentioned, kind of very early in the lecture, we went from 25,000 Chicagoans employed to just 7,000 at the beginning of the 2000s, and now there's even less, I'm sure, as things are further mechanized, and there's less industries.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did they go? Did they go
Mexico a
overseas?
lot?
Well, like, so Mars is actually headquartered in Virginia. They've been there for, I think, since the 70s or 80s. And so they're headquartered in Virginia, but they have very specifically their Global Innovation Center where they're kind of testing new treats here in Chicago. But so there are some that are just headquarters in other places of the country or overseas now, especially as they've kind of been purchased by larger conglomerations. Yeah.
Do you know why it tastes so different, the same candy bar, if you're not in the same country? Because like US candy bars do not taste the same as European candy bars.
I think
Candy bars have fewer ingredients usually.
yeah, it really comes from the ingredient list, and then also the quality and the production of those raw ingredients are very are very different. So in America, there's probably, unfortunately, a lot more additives now, where maybe as overseas, there's less of that. Yeah.
They don't use a lot of high fructose corn syrup.
Either. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever tried
I
it?
had heard
It's different.
Yeah.
Probably about 6 months ago to a year that the fields mints.
Yeah.
Fields mints.
Yes.
because that's
Spring
what
mints,
they are,
yeah.
that they were bringing the manufacturing back to the Macy's on State and the
Yeah.
State.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that? Did you hear?
I don't. I didn't. Frango's gets an honorable mention, but I had a little blurb, but I wanted to give time for questions. But actually, Frango's is not from Chicago, so I know it has a really big piece in Chicago candy history. But it was actually that in 1918, Marshall Field and Company acquired a Seattle-based department store chain called Frederick and Nelson's, and with it acquired their recipe for Frango mints. And it wasn't until 1929 that Fields actually moved production of Frango mints to the 13th floor of the Marshall Fields building on State Street. And so the last page of the photos, there's the original Blommer's factory, and then on the back is a great photo of the Frango mints kitchen in Marshall Fields.
And that was in the State Street.
Yes, yeah, on the 13th floor. Yeah,
Wow. Until when were they there?
Until they sold.
yeah, until it became like Macy's. Yeah.
Frango did come back.
So they still have. There was still. Yeah, so Frango still exists, and there was like, even when it was Macy's, there was still like a small batch process happening in that store, but it was not.
Okay.
Yeah, not Macy's kind of cup of tea to continue that on such a large scale.
Large scale.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Do you know anything regarding patents for candy bars? Like, can you still, can you get it?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like,
Oh, you can't be just getting caught.
We could just call it a Knickers.
it's just like
Yeah.
nuts and chocolate. Like,
Yeah.
it's a pretty.
I have not. So the question was if I know anything about patents for candy bars. I have not looked at patents for candy bars. Obviously, there's a lot of like non-branded candies. I think there's less of that now because just with really steep competition, people really kind of placed their mark where they wanted to, and probably patented a lot more than what we were seeing at the beginning of the 20th century. when you had more kind of generic candies. So I guarantee there is a patent for Snickers.
It's probably just a name, right? Because I mean, McDonald's, they have a Big Mac, but you can sell hamburgers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the name that's
Yeah.
attached to the product.
Yeah. I mean, and like the Baby Ruth is like, has peanuts and chocolate too, but it doesn't necessarily have like, I think it also has caramel, but it's like different. It's different somehow. Yeah. Yeah. Stephanie, and then we'll get, yeah.
So the John Muir that you talked about, the first confection, that's not the John Muir itself.
No, it's M-U-H-R, not M-U-I-R. Yeah.
Had to clarify.
I know. I know. Yeah.
And one more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know who owns the Blommer's factory today?
I don't know.
It was bought by, I believe, a Chinese company. They don't do tours anymore. You used to be able to go in and get tours.
I know, and I tried to go to the retail store, and there was nothing there before they closed the retail store.
Merchandise mart.
Yeah.
And they've given out samples in the merchandise mart before.
Interesting.
But you used to be able to go in the store and stuff.
Yeah.
They're bought out. You can't
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And
And then,
I
yeah.
got a question about the Brock's. I know you said that they're working on landmark status.
Mars.
Or Mars, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Brock's, I'm sorry. All the chocolate. Do you know what they've proposed? Do they want to make a factory? Do they want to make a museum? Do they want to make, because I mean, it almost looks like housing. It never looked like a factory.
Yeah, so, and I can share this because it's online. So the landmark designation actually will only cover the kind of front portion of the factory.
That's right, the facade, yeah.
So it will be it's a very kind of long and narrow designation. It doesn't mean that like the rest of the building isn't protected, but if someone was to come in and want to demolish the kind of the factory manufacturing portion, they could, and build something behind it. I know like the community, I think, has talked about a community center. I'm sure housing has been talked about. All of kind of the documentation. I think they had like four or five like really big community meetings. It's all
It's a big
online.
building
Yeah.
community. I kind
Yeah.
of grew up not far, and I lived not far, and that was all that was there.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a very big.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as I know, like that area was very hard pressed for development because of the Cook County Asylum that was in the area, and it was not, people just didn't want to live there. And so it really wasn't until Mars came that like Galewood and Montclair, which was still highly undeveloped. Mars was actually bought a former golf course, which is called Westward Ho, and I love it. Westward Ho is the golf course name. So they actually bought the golf course and developed on the golf course, and then it wasn't until it wasn't until Mars kind of came to the area that then residential development started. You had a very small commercial corridor at on Grand and like Harlem, which is a few blocks away. And then you still had a lot of like kind of large farmland actually that was undeveloped, specifically because of the idea of living in the area around the Cook County Asylum and Poorhouse.
And they had the rail line, because that rail line
Yeah.
took people there, but they used that for what? They used the train line for Mars.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had said that Brock's didn't stay in the chocolate game. I
Yeah.
remember as a kid, Brock's had stars. Those were the
Yeah.
The
chocolate
hurricane.
stars. Those were like the middle class chocolates when you only got the Fannie Mae and the Cupids when on special
Yeah.
occasions. Do they still make those Brock stars? I wonder.
I don't know, but and in case I didn't say, specifically it was the chocolate bar.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were trying to compete with O. Henry and Baby Ruth and the Mars chocolate bars, and they decided not to do that. So Little Chocolates they probably continued with. I don't know if they still make it. It's hard to know. You really have to read the back of your candy packages to know like actually like who is manufacturing this. Yeah. Because it's all like it's very oddly all connected, at least for some of them with Ferrera buying Brock's. But yeah, you really have to read the back of the package to know if it's still a Brock's recipe or not. Yeah.
What did you say?
Dog food division for quite a while.
Of Mars or Brock? Oh really?
It was so weird. It was like, oh yeah.
It's chappy. That's how it started.
They own so
Yeah.
many pet foods. It's unbelievable.
You would be surprised at what you would not guess like what Mars owns. It's really interesting. Yeah.
You know, Blomers, you said, has such a big market share now, that like the 45% of the market. I don't see anything of their products out there. Do they supply the other?
Yeah, so they process cocoa beans to then yes, yeah. And Mars actually processes their chocolate on site. So if you ever look at like an aerial or drive past the Mars factory, you'll see the big tanks of chocolate at the Mars factory.
They
So
supply a lot of bakeries and stuff too. They're
Yeah.
cooking chocolate and stuff.
yeah.
One more question.
And any other question?
Where's Mars moving the headquarters to?
So Mars is already headquartered in Virginia. They're just closing the Chicago manufacturing plant.
Are they moving it anywhere or just closing it?
I know like in recent years they purchased a factory out I think in Kansas, but I assume they're moving it to one of their other already existing facilities, and they're working on relocating the employees like appropriately, but they're not necessarily opening another plant to replace the Chicago plant.
The one at Goose Island, you could still go like to the testing facility.
The like research and testing facility.
Will that remain the
Yeah.
R&D center?
Yeah. So they're going to keep that, but not the actual manufacturing facility, sadly. Making me move. Oh, God. There we go.
All right, guys. Thank you again so much. Please don't forget to tip your bartender. Give it up for Oscar. As a friendly reminder, next week we'll have Layla Royale here talking about the history of forensics. Secret connection to the Glessner house, spoiler alert. Additionally, as of tonight, you can RSVP for our lecture in 2 weeks, which is going to be all about the fashionable impact of Chicago's savvy socialites, given by our very own door wench, Stephanie Simmons. So make sure you grab a seat for her lecture. We do expect it to sell out because she's very popular, and it's going to be her first, so only come if you're going to be nice. Thank you, guys. Please don't forget to donate online. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, of course. Good.
Oh, yeah. Did you see it? Yeah.